This season on The Couch, Falz the Bad Guy and Laila Johnson Salami place your presidential aspirants on the hot seat.
This guy want to put me in trouble. I won't allow you.
No, but
Okay.
no, this is a very important and sensitive topic, I
The truth.
believe. Okay, do you think that right now, people that have a certain sexual orientation are being discriminated against? I don't know. I don't believe so.
The excitement.
C'est le moment de faire la fête, C'est le moment.
And the totally unscripted nature. Oh wait, but what is on The Couch?
It's a relaxed style. I don't want anybody to come here and tight or chest. I don't know, stronger face. It's not, this kind of setting is all relaxed. You have your stocking, have your shoe, put on your knicker.
It's On The Couch with Falz and Laila.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
My name is Falz, the Bad Guy. I'm the president of the Sweet Boy Association.
And my name is Laila Johnson Salami, of course, the president of the Sweet Girl Association.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
Nice to be here. Falz LAILA, my name is Sina Fagbenro Byron. I'm a presidential aspirant on the COA party. I like to believe I'm a member of the Sweet People Association.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So just getting to know you, generally speaking, what sort of stuff do you enjoy doing?
Well, as a matter of fact, I love meeting people. I'm a people's person. As a matter of fact, I also play music.
Oh, great.
Yes, absolutely.
What style of music?
I call it totally tropical music.
Very interesting.
Yes, it's a mixture of Afro, jazz, high life, and stuff.
So you play instruments or just
I
sing?
play the guitar actually, and I sing. I compose my own songs.
Amazing stuff.
Yes. I like to call myself an investor in people, a believer in God, and just a regular guy actually. Yeah.
Interesting. An investor in people.
Yes.
And if I'm correct, you've worked in government for 25 years.
Well, I have worked in government. I have worked on governance and around government. You're saying with government, yes, but in government, I've worked in government for about 10 years before I retired. But prior to that time, I was working on governance. I was working in the governance environment, working with governments as sort of a specialist.
Okay.
In the area of governance. But it wasn't Nigerian government I worked for. I worked for British government for
Interesting.
about 10 years, the Department for International Development.
Interesting.
Yes.
So how did you leverage on that to invest in people?
Well, basically, in the first place, you've got to know the value of people before and quite frankly, I would say my investing in people, being an investor in people, started way back from my youth service days. The very first job I did as a youth corper was as a teacher. And I remember then it was in Akoko, Ondo State. And the road to the school was terrible, The road to this town was bad. And I was a youth corper. I studied economics for a first degree. And so, during youth corp, I said, look, I can't be traveling on this road, so I got to get myself interested in whatever I was doing. So officially, I was assigned to teach Form 4 economics. And then, I studied fine arts as well in my A-levels. So I discovered that Form 1 and 2 didn't have a fine art teacher. So I volunteered to teach fine art. And then my colleague, who was a youth corper too, he was always traveling. So I always covered for him in teaching Form 3 geography. And then I also took Form 5 lessons. So at some point in time in my youth corps, I was teaching Form 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, different subjects. And I think it's probably the most fantastic job I ever did in my life, to teach young people, to be a teacher. And today, for example, one of my students is a federal high court judge in Abuja. I got another student of mine who's a vice principal of the school. And a whole lot of people, as a matter of fact, one of my colleagues in DFID, I was in the office one day, and, there's this gentleman that was sitting down, And he just called my name, Mr. Fagbenro. I said, yeah. He said it was because of the way I walked. I said, who are you? Then he reminded me. He happened to be my student, and he happened to also be now, he was a husband of one of my colleagues at work. Of course, at work, we used to call each other by first names, but after she discovered that I was her husband's teacher, she started calling me uncle, So what I'm trying to say is that the way you invest in people is the time you spend, especially with younger people, the energies, what you invest your entire purpose. When I worked on governance, I was basically, my own specialty in governance is public service delivery, the service delivery. And the object and purpose of any government or governance is to deliver services to the people. Now, the most important resource in any country, in any nation, is the people, is the human beings.
What qualifies you to be my next president?
Well, because we like each other. But beyond that, no, actually, look, there's a whole lot of people offering to be president. Basically, you want a president who's capable in terms of understanding the issues of governance, the political economy of Nigeria, and how to apply oneself to these things. You also want somebody who's accountable. You want somebody who is ready to answer questions, tough questions, and engage with the people and relate with the people. You want someone who's responsive, someone who knows that, well, when things are going in a particular dimension, in a particular way, people need to, nothing is certain, nothing is cast in stone. So with this capability, accountability, and responsiveness, I think that, I'm sufficiently able to demonstrate that. I think I love Nigerians, really and truly. My whole idea is to be a leader, not necessarily anybody's boss. So I believe what I bring to the space is a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of confidence, a lot of love for Nigeria. And of course I have a plan.
But no experience in the Nigerian political space, do you
think? Oh, absolutely. I have experience in the Nigerian political space. I mean, where do I want to start from? I could start from my student union days as president of law students. I could start as PR when I was PRO, National Economic Students. I was on the Students' Representative Council in the University of Ibadan in those days. You have a couple of us who ended up being governors and stuff. But even after that, 17 years ago, I contested local government chairman in Etiosa here. At that time, it was PDP. I was a member of PDP then. COA, my party now, had not been created.
Okay. I would say, it seems like party politics, matter a little bit, with this whole defection, APC, PDP, ADP, CDP,
the NPD, RAP, all
we can't really, keep track.
In fact, it's ABC to Z.
Yeah. COA hasn't necessarily been able to sort of gather as much momentum as, any of these other parties. How do you think this would affect your race?
Well, you see, truth be told is that you're right. COA party, we would not deny our limitations as a small party. But these days, you find out that, in COA party, our mantra is together we make a difference. And it's not just together as COA party individuals, but together as Nigerians. COA party is emerging. It started, it's pretty young compared to the others. But it has goodwill, a lot of goodwill, and we have a lot of good people in COA party. Now, what we are doing also is that COA party is also a member of a larger coalition.
CUPP?
Yes.
So what is the COA party ideology?
Yeah.
Okay, the COA party ideology, it's COA in... COA is not an acronym, and I think from the name you will find out what the ideology is. Basically, the ideology is about inclusiveness. COA in Hausa means all of us. COA in Yoruba means bring to us. COA in Igbo means explain to us. So running through the principles and the philosophy of COA party is the idea that to develop a country, you have to be inclusive. You have to take the wisdom of the young, the wisdom of the old, the wisdom of women, and the wisdom of men. And it's together we can make a difference. Now, COA party also believes that there are 5 ills that plague Nigeria. Poverty is one. a federal government that is actually not federal in the real sense of it. Injustice is a serious issue. And I think there are other two which I cannot just remember quite immediately. But in addressing these ills of poverty, injustice, a poor federal structure, two other things I can't remember. It's about collectively going for it. And that's why in Kowa Party we say together we make a difference.
The badge on your says end poverty.
End poverty, absolutely. Yeah.
If you got in power
Yes.
today, how do you plan, practically speaking, to end poverty?
Well, that's if you look at my website, SFB 2019, I have 5 priorities, and those priorities are integrated, but they're related. We've got to deal with safety and security. We've got to deal with
poverty in particular, I think we're going to get to those others. Poverty in particular, how do you plan to tackle poverty?
Okay, basically employment. Yorubas will say "Ishelugunse," which means that the solution to poverty is work. And if you create a raft of programs that are labor intensive and provide employment opportunities, not necessarily that government itself will be doing the employment, but we do quite a bit of work, projects and programs, right, in which you don't factor in the employment quotient into those programs. And this is where we want to make a deviation. We have to generate, in the first place, we've got to get people back into schools, we've got to get people back into training, we've got to get people back into learning skills. But why I wanted to reel out my priorities was that you will see that there is an opportunity for employment in each of those 5 priorities. Safety and security. As a matter of fact, security itself can employ a raft of people, across the country. The second issue is health and education. There's so much done. You can employ people for things like immunization, literacy. You've got the environment, which is another 3rd priority I have. One of the things that has been on the shelf, on the development shelf in this country for over 25 years, is things like building of the green belt. The green belt means planting trees across the northern borders of Nigeria to be able to prevent desertification from the north. And that alone, you can imagine what it is to employ people to plant trees from Sokoto to Maiduguri.
This is where I think there's something that we don't speak about enough, which is Nigeria's unemployment rates, or should we say our growth with regards to, I'm trying to contextualize it. So our population rate and our unemployment rate, right? So the economy is growing at 2%. 2018, right? It's growing at 2% and the population at 3.5%. So the problem that we are seeing is that our population is getting way too big for us to actually build up and give people jobs.
Absolutely.
What capacity is it going to take for that to happen? Because right now it doesn't sound that realistic.
That's part of why we need, we wrote something into our constitution, which is self-defeating. And we tied down revenue allocation to population, which means that inside our constitution, there is an incentive to have children, but no incentive to take care of them. Now, another reason why you have overpopulation is because you got kids, you got girls, 13 years old, 14 years old, getting married, not going to school. That's why we have a zero tolerance for illiteracy and a zero tolerance for hunger. Zero tolerance for illiteracy expects to put all girls. It is going to be a matter of national security that all children under 18 should be in school. It is not negotiable under our watch. And when you do things like that, you get people literate, you get people occupied in things, then you reduce that. Then, of course, this issue, a lot of people shy away, especially in certain states in this country. They shy away from issues like national planning, right? Family planning. And my argument is this. If you can pay so much attention on national planning, you can pay so much attention on state planning, the smallest unit of the nation, 2 do needs to be planned. So it's a question of advocacy and a conversation with the people. It's a question of not tolerating a situation whereby people are not engaged.
Okay, but that's well and good if we're looking ahead into the future and we're looking at statistics such as the fact that we may have a population of 250 million by 2030. Well and good, but it's not going to change the population of 198 million that we have now. So how do we employ 198 million people in Nigeria today? Well, not 198 million, but our 30 million that are out of employment.
Exactly. Like that's part of what I was reeling out. I said you've got to do programs that are pretty much labor intensive, pretty large scale. I'll tell you something. In the 1930s, when America was getting out of its depression, you know, after the depression, right, the FDR, Roosevelt, he set up what is called the Tennessee Valley Authority. You know, there's a great, you know, they electrified half of America, and they used it with intensive labor projects. Now, that's why I alluded to environment. The environmental challenges that Nigeria has requires a lot of people to be deployed, engaging in very gigantic projects, reclaiming the Lake Chad.
What sort of numbers are we looking at?
Oh, we're looking at numbers in the hundreds of thousands per project. I was going to ask a question that you can imagine people planting trees from Sokoto to Maiduguri on a very close-knit basis and watching those trees. You see, so there are things to be done there creative way, but the most important thing, I would say, has to do with innovation. I mean, a lot of people who have telephones, who have access to the internet, can be more creative and engage. Look what the entertainment industry has done in terms of employment, in terms of GDP for Nigeria. Look at what the sports industry has done for, you know. I think things like sports, we're very conventional in looking at what opportunities are for our youngsters. I believe that sports is not employing as much as it should, because we haven't brought sports down. In those days, when we were growing up, we had National Sports Festival, we had State Sports Festivals, we had University Academicals. It's from as a matter of fact, we had a striker in Nigeria who ended up being the Attorney General of Rivers State, Adokia Mesiamaka. He came down from the secondary and university academicals to the national team. Shegun Odegbami was in Ibadan Grammar School, from then to Ibadan Polytechnic. It was the Western region that brought him onto the national scale. And we had all that. It's a question of organization. One thing that Nigeria has failed to do and continues to fail to do with the kind of leadership we have is that we don't manage diversity very well, and we don't manage mass.
Speaking of the police, how do we tackle the issue of their actual
performance,
competence of the personnel in the police force?
Number one, my first thing, and this is why I'm in support of some kind of restructuring, the police command is over-centralized.
So are you in support of state police?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely in support of state police. But I believe that, you see, when people say state police, what comes to their mind is a replication of the current Nigerian police in 36 places. That is multiplying your problem times 36. Get your mind out of the current Nigerian police. The current Nigerian police is not reflective of what a professional police should be. And that is the truth of the matter. From their training to their accountability. Take, for example, you do not issue bullets to a policeman and at the end of the day, not ask him to account for how he spent each of those bullets. You don't do that in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, when police want to celebrate in the streets, you see them fire guns away. That is absolutely irresponsible. They are not accountable. If you go look at what happens to the police records in the police station, how do they budget for DPOs? How do they budget for police stations? Look at the training. There was an expose by Channels Television on how policemen are trained. There's a psychological aspect of how they're trained. There's a moral aspect of how they're trained. There's a criteria for recruitment. For example, I don't believe that anybody who is below the rank of sergeant should be serving outside his own local government. A police who is going to run the beat in a local government must be somebody everybody knows who his father's house is, so that you have some responsibility to the neighborhood and you will have a responsibility to the people. Then as you get senior, you can go. So on the state police issue, I believe that in a federal government, each state itself should have a constitution. Before 1966, before the military came in, each region had a constitution. That's a federal. If you go to the US is a federal government. They have the American Constitution, but the state of California has its own constitution. The state of Nevada has its constitution. The state of Texas has its constitution. New York has its constitution. Why can't we have that? And that is where, if you have states that have their constitution, inside that constitution, you can make provision for a state police and make sure that it is not the governor using the state police. You put those powers not exclusively in the hands of the governor. You even make sure that under a state constitution, the governor is even more accountable. And then another thing about the police is that there's no specialization in the police anymore. In police is like any other job. You should have specialists in homicide, you should have specialists in kidnapping, you should have specialists in burglary, you should have specialism in things like crime scene investigation. So state police is part of the solution. It will reduce the burden of the federal police, and it will reduce some of the impunities of central police.
Apart from the 36 million naira saga, I read recently about 8 billion unremitted funds in the JAM office. So we hear about different stories like this, unremitted funds, funds mysteriously disappearing. How do you think, as per public offices, how do you think, these sort of stories can sort of stop?
Be the exception rather than the rule. Well, I'll tell you one thing. In fairness to previous governments, starting from the Obasanjo regime, there has been reforms in public financial management. So you've had things like the automated systems of government financing. There's an information system, financial information management system by government that they, computerized that over time. And then they've worked on an information system for government personnel, because funds get missing through different channels, either by procurement or budget, or somebody bringing some cock and bull proposal to the government, or by people not counting exactly the monies that are coming in.
So how would you stop that under your government?
What I'm saying in essence is that you have to keep certain things going and making sure that they are retained. The Treasury Single Account is a fantastic initiative, started off by Jonathan, continued by Buhari. You got the information systems which I mentioned. You have to go and continue and strengthen those things. But you also have to make sure you appoint the right people and you keep an eye on the people you appoint. Or at least there must be some kind of supervision. So as for me, and then you build up on what it is. Now you've got to tie all those things together. If there is a leaking tap, you can't blame people for putting their bucket where it is leaking. Yours is to block the taps. So basically, you're talking about fighting corruption and fighting stealing. Corruption is manifest through most of it is done through the oil industry and the Nigerian, the NNPC. That is done. Unfortunately, most of our past presidents have done exactly the opposite of what should be done. Instead of them ensuring that a competent person manages the Ministry of Petroleum, right? And then you have a complete oversight on that person. It's either they themselves want to run it and they don't have time, or they don't have the capacity, or they have vested interests. Right? Obasanjo was Minister for Petroleum. During that period, we knew how much money was missing. Now, Buhari is Minister for Petroleum. We know how much money was missing. When Jonathan was there, Desiani was Minister for Petroleum. He had little control over her, and that was his major problem. So the issue is we have to be decisive. You have to make the institutions work. The institutions, the processes, you have to make them work. Incidentally, before I joined DFID, I was a consultant to the EFCC. I was probably their first consultant to structure how the place works.
And what do you think about the EFCC today?
Well, it should have developed further. I think one of the problems that EFCC has or had from the outset was to limit the headship of the EFCC to a policeman. The head of the EFCC could easily be an accountant or a lawyer. I think they've limited themselves, and I think that, unfortunately, the EFCC too has also been used as an instrument at the behest of the president.
Let's speak about our resources for a bit. Nigeria is one of the most naturally resourceful countries in the world.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we have a Dutch disease when it comes to oil. Yes. However, one thing in particular that I think we have a serious problem with is the fact that we are still flaring gas.
Yes.
And meanwhile, the average Nigerian home has to literally go and buy gas.
Yes.
If you were to become the president of Nigeria,
yes,
how much attention would you pay to the fact that Nigeria still gas flares in 2018? What would you do about the problem, and how long would that take?
Basically, it's my task would be to revive the gas to power project. Now, the challenge with gas is that from when you extract it from the ground to where you utilize it, you can't afford to break. You know, gas is something that, you know, the storage is different from oil, you know. And what you should do really is to pipe the gas to different facilities where you either extract something from it or you change it to power. It's a question of reviving that project. The documents are there. The plan was in place. But I think politics got into the way.
How long will that take?
Well, I wouldn't be able to hazard a guess right now. But if you start off a gas to power project now with getting the pipelines, getting the line up, because you have to pipe them through certain spaces, then getting the right gas prices, getting the commercial events, it could easily take about 2 years.
Okay.
2 years, 2.5
so
years
definitely
to actually stop that. But you have to deal with the vested interests as well. There are people, for everything you see receding in Nigeria, there are people who are benefiting heavily from it.
It's very good that you mentioned that.
Yes.
How would you handle those vested interests? You mean private individuals?
Absolutely. There are private individuals who gain more.
The cabals, in quote. We all know about them, the cabals.
As a matter of fact,
how would you handle them?
Beyond just cabals. You see, unfortunately, Nigeria is steeped in a mesh of organized crime. So handling them, it's best you don't approach it by going after individuals. There is a cabal. Anything that makes a cabal means that there is a structure. Maybe there are lines on which they connect to each other, which means that...
Yeah, what I mean, for example,
yes.
We all...
Yes.
Is, what we hear every day, that, for instance, issues of power.
Yes.
We don't have electricity because some people are benefiting from sale of generators and fuel.
Yes.
So...
It's about where you put incentives and where you put, what's the opposite of incentives now? Where you put taxes or punishments. The whole idea is to ensure you have to start from self and everybody who's in cabinet. Anybody who's in cabinet, you have to limit all this issue of, because you're a minister, you're entitled to a generator or two, we have to start reducing all that. A lot of personal decisions have to be taken by whoever is president to demonstrate and the kind of team you have around you. You also have to create, because some people find themselves in those positions because of contradictory government policy itself. Government has to be consistent. Some people find themselves in the business of importing generators, not because they are the ones who messed up the power system, but because those who should have maintained the power system did not do it, and then you leave a space for people to import generators. So you have to understand, you do a stakeholder analysis, and you do a mapping. Addressing cabals and addressing, because there are some that could be very malicious, just like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala will say, fighting corruption is a very dangerous game. You have to understand what the issues are, who are those who have the interest. There are some people who you just have to, at some point in time, put your foot down and not accept. There are others who are less malignant, more benign, that you have to negotiate with and give them alternative sources and alternative sources of livelihoods. Because if you're going to face them and you don't go to a war fighting everybody on every angle and thinking you're going to, it may not work that way. But understanding what makes it work. For the gas thing, the oil companies, they know what the incentives they benefit from, and they know what it is if they get gas and gas out. You just have to have an interlinkage of incentives that will make people sway their business in a particular direction. You give people like tax holidays. Look, in Nigeria, some people are supposed to have tax holidays. You have to be liberal with some people and encourage them to move out of certain businesses into other businesses that are more sustainable, you know. So it's a question, and of course, some of those things I can't say right now, you know, if you know what I mean.
What do you think about capital punishment?
Oh, capital punishment. You know, I'm someone that capital punishment, you mean the death penalty. I'm someone that I never give up on anybody. So I'm not particularly, if I were a governor, I would hesitate to sign off on the death sentence.
Because Nigeria has some of the highest death row statistics in the world.
And it is, and look, and most of that is predicated on a justice system that is not fantastically credible in bringing the guilty to book and setting the innocent free. In Nigeria also you have the greatest number of proportion of people awaiting trial in jail who are longer in jail than it would have been if they were actually sentenced and they have served their sentence. So there's so much injustice in the land. While you have so much injustice in the land, I don't think anybody has a moral justification to sign up for capital punishment.
I've listened and you've been so knowledgeable about so many things. The one response you gave that was underwhelming to me was around the jobs. You mentioned that you invest in people.
Yes.
And you talked a lot about planting trees.
Yes.
We know that the Nigerian government creates about 0.1% of jobs and the private sector creates 99% of jobs.
Yes.
We know that.
Yes.
And you talked about programs for creating jobs. So I'm worried about the fact that a presidential candidate talks about programs for creating jobs without telling me in concrete terms how the private sector can create more jobs.
Well, you see, when we talk about programs, we don't mean that those programs will be implemented solely by government. As a matter of fact, you can design a program and you have private sector having a major. As a matter of fact, there is no development program that is being designed today that does not have to have a, because of funding, you know. And it's how you incentivize people. Take, for example, planting trees that I mentioned. We've got a tree planting program. But who says some agricultural farm or concern cannot be involved and engage with it? We provide incentives for them. We are not going to be the ones who are going to start asking our Ministry of Agri to employ people to do this. Maybe some of them, yes. But the whole idea is to you design a program and you make sure that the implementation, right, is in the hands of those who know how to do it.
Okay, so presuming you don't win the 2019 elections, what are you going to continue to do for the Nigerian people?
I'm going to play music. That's one thing. I'm going to play music, I'm going to sing. And I do development already. Well, I mean, look, I'm already a consultant. I do development consulting. I consult for the World Bank. I consult for my ex-employers, DFID. I will continue to advocate, but this my fight against poverty will not stop. Fighting poverty, discouraging poverty wherever it stands, throws its head up. And this my mantra of zero tolerance to illiteracy has to go on. You know, so that is in and out of whether I'm in government or not. It is something that has to be done. I also have incidentally, that's when you were asking about whether I'm a feminist or not. I have an NGO called the Victoria Modupe Oke Foundation, which deals with ensuring that girls and disadvantaged women have access to education and have access to skills, you know, skills and entrepreneurship. And that is one mantra, because I was, you know, I'm an only child, and my mom was very, very powerful in my growing up. So was my grandmom. You know, my mother was very political, and I thoroughly, you know, she's still alive. She's 88 years old, and the foundation is named after her, and it's something we set up 5-6 years ago, and we've trained quite a let me say close to 1,500 young girls. You know, we do 2-week training for them, so we do that consistently. We've done in Oyo State, we've done in basically it's Oyo State, and in Lagos, Makoko, the Makoko area of Lagos State, where we train, we just get them to have skills and some entrepreneurship and knowledge as well. So things like that will go on. I'm a development person. That's all what I've done for the past 30 years. That's what I'm going to do. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Great stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
But as you're leaving, you're gonna dance out of this place.
Okay.
I'm gonna play you some music.
Okay. What's the latest dance now? What do you call it?
We do shaku shaku.
Shaku shaku. Remember we do the shaku shaku. So you're gonna show us your shaku shaku skills.
Oh. Yeah. Well, you got to show me a sample first. Yeah. Shaku shaku.
Bad guys in the building. I told you I'm the life for the party. Why your guys want they try to let that be? Beating head don't go, make me want to hack. So give me them side, Sholo Maggie. Mommy see I no be legal spender. I got a shitload of that legal tender. I'm thinking how we met is not coincidental. I can make a life just a little better. Have you ever been to Lagos? Have you been with a guy from my city? Hakuna Matata. I like your matako, my titi. Le Guédou est magique. Et Fimi je veux danser. Tu es magnifique.
Next time on the couch with Falz and LAILA.
Well, there's a lot of things that are not okay on the continent of Africa, just like you have in other places. What I'm saying to you is that I do not support populations that you cannot support with your resources.
This is Nigeria. Look how I'm living now. Look how I'm living now. Everybody be criminal. This is Nigeria.